Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology and also how we can use it to see what's coming up, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of the people around the world in which we live. And so it's been kind of a weird week for me, an unusual week for me. Uh, so we had a Mercury retrograde occur on Tuesday, Wednesday. And let's see now, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Um, I lost some animals this week. They both passed away rather quickly, and that happens sometimes. So it's been kind of a weird week, kind of an emotional week for me. Um, I am one of those people who tends to get very attached to their animals. And so that was just, so I just wanted to share that. And just to let you know if my energy level seems to be a little bit low tonight. It's Saturday night, and I also wanted to let you know I'm just going to stop the share for the time being. If you want to study with me, if you want to get a reading from me, if you just want to talk with me about Vedic astrology in particular or your chart, uh, please give me a call or else text me at 508 525 0001. Again, that's 508 525 0001. I am taking new students on now. I am expanding. My prices will go up slightly depending on the economic climate in 2024. And I will always strive to make it affordable for you. Okay, so if you want to talk, if you're an astrologer and you'd like to be presenting with me, that's fine. I do have some people. I have a list of people who I uh, hope to get back to in the fall, and a lot of those will probably be pushed until either next week or even the new year, just because of some outstanding commitments I have. So, for those of you who have been kept waiting, and I've been promising this for months, I know I have. It's just circumstances beyond my control have been working towards not allowing that to happen. In the meanwhile, I will be broadcasting more often. I'll probably go online live at some point. I'll let you know well in advance. And so it looks to be a good year. There's a tendency to kind of uh, fall into a kind of a predictable rut on programs like this because, because this is I know this is the minimum I can do, but I plan to get a little bit more energetic, especially in 2024. So that having been said, you can also email me at Gary Gomes, then the letter G at gmail.com. And again, that's Gary Gomes, GaryGomes, then the letter G at gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. Or again, the phone number is 508 525 0001. And I'm trying to pace my breaths because I've been talking a lot over the past couple of days and my voice tends to wear out after a certain point. So let's go on to the chart. Let's show the chart for tonight. And this is for, and I'm going to do it 3 times just to be on the safe side. one more time for good luck. Okay. All right. And we all want good luck. We all want good combinations for us. So right now we have a Cancer rising sign. The Gati Lagna is in that sign. So actually, there's some fame connected with public personalities or public figures. So that may sound obvious. Oh, by the way, again, very important. Please subscribe, like, and share the video and comment. Please do comment. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate hearing from you. And I love and respect you all. Thank you very much for watching. So we have the Gati Lagna and the Yarada Lagna are both placed in the first house. What does that mean? Well, basically, a lot of what's going on in the world right now has to do with fame or promotion or even care of people. Okay, so we have so the Gati Lagna is really considered to be one of the fame indicators in the chart. The Aruda Lagna is the personality indicator. We have Kudanda, who's a little planet and Upagraha in the first house. And Lord of the first house is over here in the seventh. So we're worried about people's impressions of us overall. This is true not only of you and I, but the entire world. And I think one of the things that's happening is so there are some good combinations in the chart. There are some really bad ones, and I'll go through both of those at the same time. The first and most noticeable one is that we have a Mercury retrograde, which I should have mentioned last week. Also, the sun's just changed signs today. So that's actually a bit of a relief for some of us with prominent Scorpios or Virgos or Libras. There was a lot of pressure put on us over the past few days, few weeks, actually, because Saturn was aspecting this particular sign. Okay, so Saturn aspects 3 signs away. It's aspecting Jupiter. It's aspecting the second house of finances, and it's also aspecting the fifth house of uh, of um, past life credit, luck, uh, what have you. And although this combination does form a kind of a partnership combination, partners will be a little bit difficult to please, a little bit slow, maybe even a little bit inconsiderate or vengeful at times with this particular combination. I think one of the things that we're looking at is whenever we have a Mercury retrograde, communications are spoiled. And Mercury just turned retrograde right when it was moving out of Mula Nakshatra, which is a very destructive nakshatra. So essentially, Sun just entered this nakshatra. So what we can look forward to is over the next couple of weeks, at least 2 to 3 weeks, is destruction of some governing bodies due to either miscommunication or internal meltdown. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see revolts or rampages going on. That's not what that necessarily means. But you will see some kinds of legal issues come up. You will see what I would call a reconsideration of legal traditions, a reconsideration of legalities, a reconsideration of a change in direction in terms of legal precedents. So this should be very interesting. Saturn's aspect in Jupiter, those changes will not be popular. They will go against convention. However, they will ultimately serve justice or serve the search for balance or fairness. I think I want to give you an honest appraisal. I have some problem with the word justice itself because I think one of the things that we tend to get into if we focus too heavily on justice is we're focusing on um, what we think is an absolute standard when it's much more of a flexible standard. Now, I'm not talking about anything which is a societally established norm, like a person murdering somebody or or stealing from somebody. I'm just saying that justice is by itself is not really a relative concept, but it's a concept that changes over time. It's an adjustment that's made in order to balance things out a little bit more. Okay, so it's like, so if I have, um, I'm older than I was obviously when I was 17 years old, so I'm going to like different things. I've adjusted to different concepts or different ideas than when I was 17 years old. Some of those changes came about very slowly. Some of them came about rapidly based upon new evidence. It doesn't mean that my moral center has necessarily changed, but it means I've gotten exposed to more things as I've grown up and as I've thought about them. So, um, being an astrologer, you can see combinations in charts, which you might say, well, that's clearly wrong, but they're not. They're astrological combinations. So Jupiter is traditional justice. Venus is, quote unquote, the truth. And I think one of the things we have when we have the Saturn Mars mutual aspect, like we have right here, is there's going to be this fine tuning of facts and logic. So, in some ways, logic will be twisted by Saturn's aspect, and Saturn's and Mars aspect on Saturn will tend to make us quick to penalize. Venus's aspect on Jupiter will also accord us time to take a more flexible perspective on whether or not things break with social norms or break with justice systems or break the law. And I think that this is actually a positive time for us this next uh, a couple of weeks or so. And Venus will be moving into this sign within about 10 days. We'll be moving into Scorpio within about 10 days. So you'll see a shift to that Venus being put under pressure again within about 10 days' time. So you will see more calls for justice. Mars will be moving into Mula Nakshatra within about 15 days. This is a time when I would be concerned about aggressive action, um, violence, and also even military action. Okay, so I think one of the things I'm going to keep my eye on between now and the end of the year is whether or not there's more aggressive action taking place in the world and not less. Um, K2's in the third house. K2 and Rahu always aspect each other, regardless of the chart we have them in. Rahu is connected with um, dissatisfaction, and especially in Pisces in the sign ruled by Pisces, it will be almost a fanaticism about spirituality, almost what I would call um, a wishful thinking about who's right and who's wrong. And again, as I've said before, we've seen this a great deal in what's happening in Israel already. We're going to see it happening a great deal in what's happening in the United States over the next year and a half. So that Rahu in Pisces, although it started earlier than this, than Rahu's transit into Pisces, does kind of explain why certain people who should be viewed as pariahs, according to conventional thinking, are actually leading in polls right now. It also explains why there have been flips in government in places where you wouldn't expect flips in government, like the Netherlands. It also explains why um, you'll see more what I would call belief-driven ideologies starting to um, take hold a bit, and those belief-driven ideologies will tend to have a lot of um, power over the next year and a half. So it's really not a time of religious war, but it's close to it. And I think one of the things I would watch out for is this Rahu Saturn conjunction in the 1990s set up the conditions for um, oh gosh, for the intervention in Kosovo. It set up the conditions for ultimately for um, Clinton's bombing of uh, Clinton's order of bombing during his impeachment trial. It set up the conditions for a variety of military endeavors which had long-term negative consequences for the United States. So this is something which is to be watched out for or concerned. Those, what I would call um, Kosovo, I don't think was a stupid mistake. Somalia was. Certain activities that were undertaken in the 1990s definitely were, and in the 2000s definitely were. So if we want to avoid those kinds of activities which can put us on uh, in the situation of being um, perceived as trying to influence or steer world events, um, this is the time to look out for them. This is the time over the next couple of years to look out for them. It's not imminent, but this Sun Mars conjunction can make people a little trigger happy. So I think, and especially if it's in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, and I know people are going to say, well, Sagittarius is such a nice sign, such a diplomatic sign. How could we go wrong with Sagittarius? Sagittarius is also the art of war. Uh, Vedic astrology. It's the art of negotiation, but also the art of war. And I think one of the things you have to be aware of is that this nakshatra changes things. It changes governments. It changes people. It changes economic systems. So, first couple of weeks, the next couple of weeks, with Sun in this particular nakshatra and Mercury also going backwards, we're going to be repeating past mistakes. I definitely hope I'm right about that. So I think let me just look at this a little bit more closely. Saturn's aspect in Jupiter. Attempts at suppression of freedom of speech will be successful for about a month. So that's Venus moving into under Saturn's aspect. And that tension will probably continue at least until April, okay, between people. So you'll see a variety of countries start to follow Canada and to a lesser extent the United States direction, and also Ireland's direction in terms of trying to stop the free flow of ideas. And again, this is not necessarily because I agree with the positions that people are taking online or um, in um, in media in general. It's just because I was always taught, and this is sort of like a basic principle for me, that freedom of speech is sacrosanct. It is an inviolate right. Um, and so I may not like what people are saying. I may wish that people weren't saying certain things. I may virulently disagree with them, but we have a constitution, and the First Amendment was that government shall make no law regarding the abridging of freedom of speech. I'm not saying it correctly, or regarding the establishment of a religion, et cetera, et cetera. So, and freedom of the press is also a sacrosanct part of that First Amendment. And I think we're starting to lose sight of that. I think we're starting to lose sight of that because we're trying to be correct and we're trying to not offend people. And it's impossible not to offend people. It's just, it's, you can be sensitive to them, but it's impossible not to offend them. Okay. So I'm not saying that everybody should go up to everybody outside and say, "Hey, I think you're X," and and not worry about hurting people's feelings. I tend to be um, personally, that's one of the worst things I think you can do to a person is to deliberately hurt their feelings. Um, and I know I've probably done it, uh, but consciously, that's never my goal. Um, and I don't think it doesn't make me a better person because of it. It just makes me aware that I want to treat people like I would like to be treated. Okay, so enough of that rambling on. Rahu in the ninth is a little bit fear about destruction of institutions with Rahu in the ninth, especially religious institutions. And with Jupiter in the 10th house, this can almost indicate. So we have the 10th Lord in the 5th house. It sort of indicates not necessarily government taking over as leaders, but essentially um, what I would call elite classes taking over as leaders, so thought leaders taking over as leaders. And while I find nothing inherently offensive about that, I not really, I really don't like what I would call a know-it-all culture, where we have to rely on um, experts to make our decisions for us. Now, I have nothing against experts. I think, these are people who study their trade, done well in life by studying their trade. But I also want the option or the ability to make up my mind for myself. Okay. So I think that's the drawing line. That's the distinguishing line. Okay. So that, like I said, these are just personal preferences, and this kind of not necessarily rebellion, but this kind of like um, growing attitude that we're seeing that really doesn't trust media. We can actually see um, media um, misrepresenting people. If you look at what's reported out and what is actually said, that's kind of interesting. So again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not somebody who's a final authority. I'm just somebody who watches TV and pays attention. And one of the things I noticed in the United States chart is that Mercury Rahu combination in the eighth house. That's really it. We're essentially a very commercial culture. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but we'll also make up things in order to promote commercial causes. So, and that's why we have um, agencies or checkers or things like that, is in order to protect us from those things, or at least to give us um, what they have found. And there's a certain regulatory agenda, or there's a regulatory responsibility in the United States to protect the citizenry. That's true, but but there's not a regulatory responsibility um, for the government to tell us how to think. That's not there. So I think this is going to be an interesting issue. It's not going to go away for a while. We're in this major planetary period for at least another. Um, I think it's about another 2016. Yeah, so about another 12 years at least. So um, I think this will be fascinating to watch over the next few years. So let's look at the individual signs. And I apologize for focusing so much on media. I know that a lot of you folks are probably getting sick of this. But to me, that's the most powerful institution in the world. And it's more powerful than governments. And I think it's also how we trade, how we interact with people, how we understand things. Um, and I'm getting a little bit worried about the direction we're headed. I could be totally wrong. God knows I've been wrong before. But astrologically, that's what it looks like is happening as well. The Saturn conjunction with Rahu in particular is really kind of a difficult combination. And the last time we had it was in the 1990s. We had the Clinton administration, which didn't manage to engineer a soft landing, but we also had a rather lengthy push or strong pushback. And we also had a variety of decisions made, which essentially put up conditions for that led to the collapse, the 2007 collapse, and also led to the start of war, the start of international conflicts. So that's why I'm leery about that. The last time, which is close to this in planetary combinations, is the 1960s, and again, that was a similar situation. So it's I have historical reasons for why I'm looking at this the way I'm looking at it. So let's go back to this chart. Yeah, we had the political divide in the late 1960s, early 1970s, which not many of you can remember. I certainly can. Um, and it wasn't pretty, believe me. So let's go on to this chart, and let's look at Aries. What's going to happen for Aries? So Aries has Jupiter again in the first house. It'll turn direct shortly, and basically, uh, Jupiter and Venus are aspecting each other. That can mean a search for truth. This sign is going to do better relationship wise than it has for a while. And also in terms of money, it'll do better monetarily than it has for a while. Ketu's in the sixth. There is some danger from health related issues, so be careful about problems with liver and kidneys. Mars is in the eighth house. The Lord of the first is in the eighth. So even though this sign will have a certain amount of luck, it'll still feel like it's a little bit imprisoned or a little bit confined. Sun and retrograde Mercury are in the ninth house. There's some need to kick back desires just a little bit. And what I mean by that is some of the things you thought were going to go smoothly are going to take twice as much work to pull together over the next 3 weeks. So that means technological problems. I had a lot of internet breakups this week, and also communications issues. So, and we have Saturn in the 11th house. Again, that indicates gain, but slow gain. And Moon indicates some potential for change in career, or at least change in career outlook for this sign. Still kind of an expensive period for this sign. So keep that in mind. Taurus, still a lot of expenses because of friendships and trying to please friends. The second house Lord and the fifth house Lord, that's Mercury, are both placed in the eighth house. So that indicates children will be a little bit problematic. Money will be a little bit problematic, but relationship partner will be bringing in more money, but it'll be delayed. For 2, 3, 4. In terms of relationship life, some arguments with spouse or relationship partner, and Mercury, Sun and Mercury are in the eighth house, so there'll be a lack of confidence for the sign this month. Moon's in the ninth house, a change in direction in life, a lot of hard work, and we've already spoken about the friends and the expenses. Gemini has the Lord of the first retrograde in the seventh house, excuse me. And that usually indicates thinking about past relationships, dwelling on past relationships. That'll get a little bit more painful, to be honest with you, when Venus moves into the sign in about 10 days. When Venus moves into Scorpio in about 10 days. But this will bring back, to a certain extent, previous relationships. It may even manifest them or make them more pronounced. Moon is in the eighth house, so there will be some gains, some hidden gains financially. Saturn's in the ninth house, so again, slow buildup of career life, very slow. You have to be patient, Gemini. Rahu will give a lot of recognition, and Jupiter will give a lot of gains. So it's not a bad week. The only problem is a little bit flawed. The area that's a little bit flawed is relationship life. And also be careful about injuries, especially in the leg. For Cancer has its first house Lord is in the seventh house. So there's a lot of focus on relationships. There's a lot of focus on um, changing relationship patterns. There's a strong potential for the sign to be more emotional, to fall in love. Mars is in the fifth house, So you'll be attracted to people who are sort of like go-getters, doers. But also, if a person's worked hard over the past couple of years, you'll start to see some financial benefits from this combination. Mercury and Sun in the sixth house, energy levels will tend to get a little bit lower or decline a little bit. And Moon in the seventh house and Saturn in the eighth house again. The Moon is sort of what they call hemmed in by malefics in this chart. So you have Mars and Rahu also surrounding it. You have Mars and Saturn also surrounding it. So there will be some conflicts with relationship partners based upon the need to exercise self-control and not spend so much. And relationship partners won't be happy or they'll be moody about that. Rahu is in the ninth. A lot of focus on spiritual beliefs and a certain need to win. Jupiter's in the 10th house, aspected by Venus, good for career life, extraordinarily good for career life. And personal happiness for this sign is probably pretty high. But again, like I said, it's this feeling of being trapped or being isolated. That's the downside. For Leo, Leo has no planets in the first house. The Lord of the first is in the fifth, which is a very good placement. So that indicates over the next few weeks, this sign will get a lot of recognition for what it's done in the past or what it's organized. K2 is in the third house. K2 is in the second house, excuse me. And that indicates financial gain through past efforts. Venus is in the third house. There's a general desire not to offend or hurt people. Mars is in the fourth. This gives rise to what's called Mars affliction in the chart. Mars is aspecting Saturn. Relationship partners will want everything perfect, like clamp down tight. It's not exactly a pleasant experience, but I'm just telling you what to expect over the next couple of weeks. And Rahu's in the eighth house. Rahu in the eighth house is sort of an obsession with occult or hidden knowledge. Jupiter's in the ninth, which is overall a very good combination for this chart. So overall, the luck for Leo is going to be good in career matters and also in financial matters. Just domestically, things will be a little bit tough. For Virgo, K2 sits in the first house. A lot of times when K2 sits in the first house, the person can say, I really don't want to care. I really don't care whether or not it's expected of me. I want to try something new. Or they'll just say, I just want to sit here and get depressed and not really try anything new. It's not anywhere in the middle. So that case, you may feel either a lack of motivation, depending on whether or not you have planets in this particular sign, or whether or not you have, if you don't have any planets in that particular sign, or you'll feel more adventurous, more optimistic, more outgoing. Rahu's in the seventh house. There'll be a temptation to try relationship partners who you wouldn't normally consider. That doesn't mean they're good bets, but you're feeling a little bit experimental with relationships and business partnerships. Venus is in the second house, so it's a good time for money. It's a good time for financial growth. Also, K2 in the first is a very creative placement, and your intuition will not be wrong. Okay. Venus is in the second house. You already spoke about that. Mars is in the third house, so that increases, that amps up the courage. And Sun and Mercury are in the fourth house. That makes the fourth house. Communications, especially on the home front, are a little bit blocked, and there will be expenses because of that blocking. Moon is in the fifth house. That's generally good for creative outlets like writing and speech. Saturn's in the sixth, with Saturn in the sixth house. You have to be careful you don't overextend yourself or work too hard. Let me get that screen off the screen. Jupiter's in the eighth, unexpected acquisition of hidden knowledge or hidden truths. Mercury's in the 10th house. The Lord of Mercury is in the fourth house. So real life will seem like it's suspended or not really moving forward the way you want it to move forward. It'll feel that way for about 3 weeks. Um, and it's generally not a good idea to start new partnerships when Mercury is retrograde. Okay. So, in addition to not making major financial decisions, new partnerships or new friendships will tend to be a little bit twisted or difficult. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't um, have some kind of a psychic connection with people because K2's in Virgo in this chart, and those psychic connections will become much stronger over the coming months. But over the next month, there'll be a lot of miscommunications, through around early January. Let's see now. But career life, no new partnerships. Wait at least until, I would say, until mid-January, and I would even go so far as to say wait until around the end of April for new business partnerships. For Libra, Libra has Venus in the first house. Hooray, that's a great placement. It's what's called a Malavya Yoga. So this sign really can't do much wrong, although it can feel responsible for a lot of things. But normally what I've noticed when we have a Venus Malavya Yoga is people tend to be much more forgiving, much more understanding, much more sympathetic than they normally are. So enjoy this for about 10 days because when Venus enters Scorpio, they'll be much more judgmental, much more inclined to fight back, and much more depressed, okay, much harsher. Mars is, so we have 1, 2, 3 planets in their own signs in this chart. I mentioned that before. And so Mars traits are very strong in this chart, and this will give a lot of past life credit to this sign. So this sign works. It'll be rewarded monetarily. It'll be rewarded financially. However, career-wise, still feel kind of stuck because it's still kind of weak, and it's in this fourth house over here. So the person will feel stuck at home in terms of career, and that won't go away for a little while. For Saturn in the fifth, again, anything you've worked hard at in previous months or years, you'll get rewarded for. Saturn aspects Jupiter in the seventh house, so it'll attract a lot of people to you. They'll be cautious about approaching you, though. That's the thing, and you'll be cautious about approaching them. But it is a good sign for getting to know people, getting to know their strengths and weaknesses, getting to know more about them. Rahu's in the sixth house. So with Rahu in the sixth house, this tends to indicate worries about health problems or health conditions, and especially you go back to kidneys and liver again, maybe even some lung problems because Gemini is indirectly affected. Jupiter's in the 11th house. I'm sorry, my apologies, in the 7th house. So new partnerships are quite possible for the sign. As a matter of fact, there'll be a rekindling or hearing from old partnerships that you may have neglected for the past few months. And you should try to start to get those cleared up within the next 3 weeks or so, and fulfill obligations you made to people. This is just in general, but it's particularly true for Libra. And we have K2 in the 12th house, very strong spirituality, very strong intuition, some disturbed sleep. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Mars in the first house. It's called a Ruchaka Yoga. And with Mars in the first house aspecting Saturn, a lot of focus on home life, a lot of focus on repairs at home, a lot of dissatisfaction with home. Sun and Mercury in the second house, a lot of miscommunication and speech. Okay. Um, Not necessarily a bad thing, but even career wise, there'll be some miscommunication in speech. So be careful when you spell out things, write memos, things like that, documenting yourself. Jupiter's in Rahu's in the fifth house. This gives some potential romantic attractions, some potential ideological attractions. This is going to be interesting. So you'll have new ideologies to consider. Jupiter's in the sixth house, and that will cause some enemies or oppositions at the workplace. K2's in the 11th house. So again, friends are not trustworthy. Venus is in the 12th. That's a good combination for saving money. For Sagittarius, we're in the home stretch now. For Sagittarius, Sun and Mercury are in the 7th house. Miscommunications with relationship partners and with career life. So Sagittarius, this is roughly December 15th through January 15th. Will have some lack of recognition in career life, and it will be strengthened because of Mercury being retrograde. So progress in career is put on hold. Doesn't mean you should stop working, but there'll be like a pause for about 3 weeks. Moon is in the second house. Again, speech is good. Saturn is in the third house. Courage is good. And but home life is a little bit disturbed. And Jupiter's in the fifth house. But overall, good luck. Maybe more luck than you think. Maybe you think you have more luck than you actually have, but this is not a bad combination. And when Jupiter turns direct, it won't seem like a letdown. It will just be a more realistic assessment of the amount of luck you have. And finally, Mars, Venus, K2's in the 10th. We've already spoken about that. Venus is in the 11th house, good for financial gain, especially through friends. And Mars is in the 12th. So you have to watch out for fights with a relationship partner. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Moon in the first house as Lord of the seventh. So again, there's that feeling of relying on other people's opinions a lot. Saturn's in the second house. This is very good for financial growth, but very slow financial growth. Rahu's in the third house. This can give some courage, some gain through education. And let's see now, K2's in the ninth house. That can mean bosses will be difficult, but career life looks good. Financial gains look good. You will have to watch out for expenditures because of spouse or bosses. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Saturn in the first house. That's a Sasha yoga. That's a great Saturn yoga. And this gives this particular sign a certain amount of authority, leadership potential. Rahu's in the second house. It's Lord is Jupiter, which is in the third house. So again, the sign will feel like it needs more money. It won't be satisfied with financial gains. Venus is in the ninth house. It's kind of it's a good placement, but it gives more luck it gives mild luck financially, not enormous luck. Mars is in the 10th house, so career life is a big focus for this chart. Financial gains, especially from the past, and Moon is in the 12th, so this gives some problems with health issues which are resolved relatively quickly. For Pisces, finally, Rahu's in the first house, so this sign will be very passionate about what it wants to do, although it won't be quite sure what it wants to do, but it'll talk a lot about it. And I'm not making fun of Pisces. I'm just saying that basically there'll be a lot of what I would call regrets being expressed about actions not taken. Um, K2's in the seventh house. You'll attract intuitive or weird people. Probably, unless certain combinations exist in your chart, probably not a good time to get into a relationship, to be truthful, especially over the next 3 weeks in particular, but just in general. Venus is in the eighth house, a lot of interest in metaphysical or investigative work. Mars is in the ninth, good for electric real estate. Mercury and Sun are in the 10th, good for gains. And Moon is in the 11th house, good for financial gains as well. But Saturn, your friends eat away your financial gains. And this is happening a lot. So let's look at the chart. K2's in a sign ruled by Mercury. It's in an earth sign. So that ramps up the potential for earthquakes um, and violence. Let me go to the astral mapping chart and see if I can pull it up and make it big and do this quickly, because I rambled on about the world and communications too much. All right, so we have Jupiter. There is some activity on the Big Island, and we can see Jupiter's running through this particular line on the Big Island in Hawaii. And there's a Venus line running through there. So I'm a little bit concerned about floods in Hawaii, to be honest with you, floods or even lava. There's a moon line running right next to the Venus line, and it's over this chain of islands. I think that's the King Solomon Islands, I want to say. I'm not sure. And we have moon. So again, some potential for like really bad Pacific storms over here. And there's a Rahu line that's going to give a little bit of panic too. It's not near any major centers of civilization, but Hawaii is a little close to that friggin'. And so is Alaska. It's a little close to that to make me feel comfortable. Moon is passing through the west coast of Canada, and Saturn's passing through the east coast. I'm sorry, the west coast of the United States. And there's a Mars line right here in roughly in, it looks like Northern California, right next to Nevada. So I'm not going to say there's earthquakes or possibly earthquakes, but there is some possibility of major weather disruption in California over the next week or so. And it could even be happening right now. And as we go over to Mercury, Mercury's another Earth indicator that's going right through. We'll hear quite a bit of news about Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Mexico all the way down to Nicaragua and Chile and Argentina. There's a Rahu line running right through New York State, right next to New England, and down over Cuba and Haiti and up near Venezuela and Guyana, where there's been a border war brewing for the past few weeks. If anything's going to happen, it'll happen within the next 3 weeks in Venezuela. That's my feeling from the chart. Peru and Ecuador are also similarly troubled. There are domestic problems in those countries and in Colombia. Jupiter's passing through Guyana, Brazil, down into Bolivia, and down into Argentina. And I think this indicates changes in governance. The moon line is running through Brazil, and there's a Venus line, so again, some possible flooding in Brazil. There's a Saturn line running. It's really not touching anything, but it's close to Brazil, so that could indicate the economy slowing down. There's a Mars line right over Iceland, could indicate some difficulty with Earth activities or volcanic activities, but that's only a possibility, not a certainty. Um, there's a sun line right next to Spain, UK, and there's a Sun Mercury line. And so this indicates that these countries over here, basically the European Union, is going to go through increased governmental control or increased governmental um, shutdowns. Same is true of um, Libya and all the way down through close to Gabon and all the way down to the west of Africa. Over here, I believe that's Zimbabwe. And let's see now. And we have a Rahu line causing some panic in Algeria and also through Eastern Europe. There's a Jupiter line forming roughly over Ukraine, and there's also a little bit of a panic line close to Turkey and Greece. So this could indicate some potential for earthquakes or some kind of sea disruptions in this part of the world. And but it's not a certainty. And there's a Jupiter line passing over western Turkey, and that indicates generally bad luck in Ukraine and western Turkey and Syria. And we have a Venus line, an ascending Venus line running through Iran and intersected by a moon line. So, and Saudi Arabia. So this indicates inclement weather all the way down to Madagascar. And there's a Saturn line encompassing Saturn. So Iran's going to be very much in the news over the next week or so. Let's see now. Iran and Iraq. Let's see now. And finally, as we get over to India, there's a Mars line running through India. That should give some civil disruption. And there's a sun line running over Ladakh and Bangladesh. Sorry about that. And all the way up into China. So civil unrest in China. That Mercury line in China, we're going to see Vietnam, China, Indonesia in the news a lot. Jupiter line running through Australia. Venus line running through Australia. And if I'm honest here, Australia's been a little bit of a mess domestically. And there's a Saturn line running over here down near, I believe it's Melbourne, and also New Zealand. And both those countries are headed for some kind of internal shutdown. So this isn't an optimistic world map. I wish it were more so. I think you'll see it get a little bit better as we cross over into early 2024. So that's it for this week. I love you all. God bless you. Namaste, and thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you again for watching. You bless me by doing so. Bye-bye.